Here's our host, Chris Pierce.
Good morning and welcome to Viewpoint Television. I am your host, Chris, and I'm glad to be back with you another great and beautiful Sunday. Unfortunately, no, this is not No Tie Sunday, but unfortunately, I brought the wrong tie, so my crew said, your tie's got to go. But that only makes my guests, who I have here, look even better. First of all, we want to introduce our guests. First, we have Councilman Franklin Thompson. He represents District 6 on the Omaha City Council. And then we also have Councilman Garry Gernandt, who represents District 4 on the Omaha City Council, which is South Omaha. Gentlemen, I want to welcome you both and thank you both for coming on the show today.
Thank you, Chris.
You guys, the city's had a busy couple of weeks when it comes to union contracts and all that, but I don't want to get into that just yet, because one of the reasons why I wanted you guys on the show, I consider, now we're not talking age, but you guys are kind of the elder statesmen of the City Council.
Been there a couple of days.
You've been there, you're now in your fourth term, 13 years. You went through 3 mayors, or you're on your 3rd mayor. Councilor Thompson, what is it like having that kind of longevity, but dealing with different administrations?
There's some commonalities between the mayors, but then there's some subtle differences between them. And it's up to us to make those adjustments and always keep the city as the primary focus, not so much the personalities.
Now, Councilor Gernandt, do you know, 2 of the mayors came from the City Council, that being Mayor Stothert and Mayor Suttle. Mayor Mike Fahey didn't come from the City Council. Did you see a difference, between the 2 different types of mayors?
Their styles were different, yes.
Do you think the experience being on the City Council had a better understanding of what you guys went through when they threw down budgets and all those things, or did they kind of forget their council years?
No, I don't think they forgot. They certainly took the learning curve with them, and they knew when it came from the 3rd floor to the LC level, they knew what the process was.
And let's talk about process, because a lot of people would describe Omaha as a mayor-centric form of government. Would you guys agree with that?
Yes, strong mayor.
Strong mayor form of government. How does that kind of fix in what you guys try to do? You represent your constituency and you both do wonderful jobs. I've talked to people in both your districts. How does that mesh with what you want to accomplish as a council person compared to having to work with a strong mayor?
Well, I agree with the strong mayor form of government, at least for Omaha I do. It's a constant balancing act to make sure that you're on the same page. If you don't communicate, that's when it becomes a problem. The communication is the issue.
Councilman Gernandt?
For me, I think if you've got a project and a vision of your own, which we all do, there's 7 different ones out there. I have found over the years that if you've got a strong case and you've got the mayor's backing and the administration's backing, you've got a pretty good chance of getting something intertwined with the mayor's vision. If you don't, you're kind of DOA.
So let's talk about visions, because you say that every council person comes in with different visions, and we've had a couple of elections. You guys came in on a sweep with new council members in 2001. 2009 was another sweep with a lot of new council members, with Ben Gray, Chris Jerem, and Pete Festerson. How was that when you got a bunch of new members, when you guys are the stalwarts in the consistency?
Fortunately, I think the new members have really melded with us well. In fact, I'd have to say the level of professionalism kind of went up.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
I liked the new group that we work with. We don't always agree, but we are professional and we know how to fight or disagree without being disagreeable.
Councilor, give us a little inside view, because of course I'm a kind of an insider, I know, but a lot of people are like, they seem to all vote 7-0 on lots of things, or what is this consent agenda? You guys actually meet before City Council to kind of get those kinds of things in order, don't you?
On Tuesday mornings we meet at 10:30. It's called the pre-council, and we go over, and our chief of staff has reviewed the agenda as we have and has highlighted a few things, and brought out some information to us, and then we have an opportunity to respond to those and bring our own questions in, and the department heads are in the room, and we can get feedback. If they don't have the answer right away, they get it back to us by 2 o'clock in the afternoon.
So that kind of helps kind of reduce the amount of time you actually have in the legislative chamber, doesn't it?
Sometimes.
Sometimes.
I think it's a matter of efficiency. There are always topics that need more time. One topic could take anywhere from 15 minutes to 2 or 3 hours, really. And so when you get into the mundane types of votes, and they're all similar, we put those on a consent agenda because you really don't need to take them one at a time.
So in your, now both of you in their 4th terms, Councilman Thompson, what do you consider your best highlights? Some of the things you wanted to do as a city councilman that you've been able to accomplish?
I like the fact that we're starting to see the 3 cities within one start to disappear. You know, we still have a North Omaha, South Omaha, West Omaha, but it's not as pronounced as it was when we first came in. I like that, and we're working on that as a group. Everybody's working on that. The growing Omaha so that it's a destination town, a place of destination, I really see that we've really gotten better in that area. I also like the fact that we're always looking for ways of efficiency without necessarily making the services lessened. Learning how to do a little bit more with less is a good thing. If the whole ship crumbles from within or implodes because we're too top heavy or we're too expensive, then everybody's going to lose. And so those are things that are important to me. Out in my district, I don't have some of the same problems. Out in East Omaha, I don't have quite the problem with the crime. My issues out west have to do more with development, making sure that the developers don't bully the neighborhood that they're trying to join. Things like that, streets, roads, police protection.
Councilor Gernandt?
I've got to admit that it's sort of like a trifecta for me. We had a job to do once we got there, and that was to bring civility back to City Hall. And I think we did that as a group back in 2001. We worked very hard at getting that done, I think, and that's one of the things that I know that I'm proud of that we accomplished. And the other thing was of course, we had a mountain of reading to do. That's what kind of caught me off guard. And then the learning curve of the budget process, because we came right in, and that was the second thing that we were hit with. It's budget time, folks. And so that was something that I enjoy tackling. Look forward to it every year.
You know, and everyone knows that the city council is actually nonpartisan, but Councilor Gernandt, you're a Democrat. Councilor Thompson, you're a Republican. And sometimes we hear 4-3 votes, and they are along party lines. But do you think, when you talk about the camaraderie and the cooperation, do you see that those party letters kind of dissolve through that, or do you still think we are nonpartisan, but we're really not? I mean, what do you think the atmosphere is?
It's kind of a 50-50 draw for me. Recently, I took a lot of criticism from my party for voting for minimum wage. So there are times when I think both of us have not voted exactly like our party wanted us to. We voted our conscience. And I think you have to do that. You have to be not only a representative of the people that elected you, but you have to be a steward for the larger city, the good for the city. So it's a balancing act between representing the people who put you there versus, no, I think this is best for the city, so I'm going to go this route. And it's hard to predict it. You do it on a week-to-week basis, and you do it as you go along.
And it brings up when Chuck Sigerson had to step down because of his illness, a lot of people thought, well, that leaves, there was a majority, a Democrat membership on the council, and the thought was this is an opportunity for the Democrats anyway to have a supermajority, and actually it didn't happen that way. You ended up appointing a Republican to that position. How does that? I mean, that had to have been a very interesting conversation, or was it more about who those applicants were? Take us through that, if you could, Gary.
Well, there was, as I recall it, a moderate-sized list, and there was a review process, and we went through all of that, and it just kind of percolated out the way that it did when Mr. Mulligan came right up to the top.
And the other shocking thing is he ended up becoming council president.
Yes, he did.
So he must have been a really good politician to get to being the newbie and taking over. One more thing, one of the things is that we had a very large, in recent history, annexation package just recently. And there's been a lot of talk that Omaha needs to start doing infill. There's a lot of pockets in the middle of our city that are not annexed. But people don't understand, and maybe you guys can help our audience understand, annexation isn't as easy as some people think it is. But there's a lot to it, isn't there, Councilman Thompson?
Yes, a lot of it has to do with the debt ratio that the SID has.
And what you mean by that, for our audience, it's basically those developments cost money, and there's debt that was incurred building that development. Someone has to pay that debt off, and correct me if I'm wrong, but when the city annexes, they say, we will assume that debt.
Yes.
And that goes into play for lots of things for the city.
Lots of things, yes. And then a lot of it has to do also with businesses. If a very large box store comes into an area, we want to capture the sales and property taxes for that. So there's a lot of different parts that go to the formula.
Gary, do you see more annexation packages coming in the future as we go forward, or do you think Omaha took a step, we're probably going to take it a bit slower in future years, given that we did take on quite a bit of debt this time?
Oh, I think we'll see some. I don't know if they're going to be as large as this last one, but I think we'll see them.
All right, when we come back, guys, we're going to talk about some of the things that are happening now, including the most recent bond rating downgrade, but there's a lot of things that come with that, so we'll be right back.
For 45 years, Family Housing Advisory Services has been improving quality of life by helping people achieve housing and financial stability. FAS prevents homelessness, educates homeowners, provides foreclosure prevention options, develops financially wise consumers, offers affordable mortgage lending options, eliminates housing discrimination, and reduces poverty. Programs and services include homebuyer education, tenant services, financial management, tax assistance, homeowner finance, and fair housing. For more information, call 402-934-7921.
Selling cookies is about
the big picture. You have to have a goal. A big goal.
Something you and your team
want to do in the world. We choose where the money goes. A trip, an adventure, helping people out.
Helping a lot of people out.
And about the money, we
are responsible for it.
Handling it, managing it, tracking it, doing great things with it.
This is business.
Girl business.
The biggest girl-run business
in the world.
Did you think this was just about cookies?
Do you know about 211? It's help for an elderly relative or a troubled teen, family counseling, or job training. Instead of hunting for phone numbers, dial 211. 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, talk to someone who will find the local information you need. United Way and its statewide partners want you to get connected and get answers. Dial 211 or go online at ne211.org.
Listen, I think it's time we had that talk. Now, I can tell that you really like this girl, but I think you kids move way too fast. I just need to know that you're using protection.
Dad.
So buckle up, son. And no sex!
Welcome back to our No Tie Sunday version of Viewpoint. Glad you came back. Today, my guests are what I call the elder statesmen and the longest serving current city council members that we've got, Councilman Franklin Thompson and Councilman Garry Gernandt. again, thank you guys for coming.
You
We
bet.
kind of left with annexation and some of the money that's involved. So let's get into some nitty and gritty of what's been happening with Omaha. You know, a couple things. Some people are fearing that we're about to get into another union contract war that we thought we were done with. We've got the firefighter. Actually, everyone's contract is ended or will end by the end of the year. The interesting thing, some people were asking, why did the city council vote to lay over the final contract proposal to the fire department? A lot of people are not understanding why the council would lay over that. And I know you guys are on opposite ends of that, so I want to give you both opportunity to kind of explain why that happened.
I'll let Gary start.
Oh, well, okay, we'll let Gary start.
Just felt that there was a need. We were told one thing, and prior to the vote, we were told something else. And the two just sort of started to butt heads.
Okay.
And said, let's back off, get back to the table, continue to talk. And with doing that, you need more time.
Okay.
And that's why I went for the layover.
Councilman Thompson?
I went the opposite because the briefing that I received, it was crystal clear as to what was going on. I believe that union members are sometimes myopic and they don't see the big picture. They don't always join in the city view of things. And I felt that the mayor was trying to nudge them and get them going, and she was also protecting her right to go to the CIR. So I felt she was saying that this is a tactic that she needed. So I voted to go ahead and vote for it.
And there, you know, in the city council meeting, there seemed to be some confusion about this is really a new procedural kind of thing that you guys now have to do. Is that correct, or did I not quite understand it with the new CIR changes that this vote for a final is a new procedural vote that you guys are being asked to do now?
We've done it before.
Oh, have you? Okay.
Yes.
But you guys don't see this as and from what I understand and what I've talked to the mayor's office, there's not been like a stall in the negotiations. We shouldn't be looking at, well, this doesn't, you know, this final deal didn't pass. Doesn't mean that the parties are not talking. That's still happening. It's just, this has just happened to be a thing.
It's one of those things in government where final really isn't final.
Yeah, I did get that from the meeting. Then there's final, there's last and final, and there's best, last, and final.
Best, last, and final.
So it's like, okay, whatever.
And a lot of it, Chris, is style and tactic, because you have opposite sides who want different things. And so it's a matter of leverage. And I personally felt, along with just a couple of others of my colleagues, that the mayor needed as much leverage as she could.
And there's been some changes. At one point, the mayor was the negotiating responsible party. Then it switched to the city council. And then it's back to the mayor. And I think even you mentioned. I think Councilman Pauls mentioned that we should have faith in the negotiating party. If this is what they need, we should. Do you guys, as council members, and I know that we all have our own ideological points of view when it comes to labor, and I think we all understand that labor, their primary responsibility is to their membership. The mayor's primary responsibility is to the city. You guys, this is my opinion, you guys can correct me or give me your version, you guys are sort of stuck in the middle.
We're the referees.
Yeah, and that's not an easy position to be in, is it?
Not only are we the referees, we're the ones that's trying to get people to buy into a citywide vision. So I understand that 50% of you is for your brethren in the union, but the other 50% has to be for the city. If the system breaks down, not only do you lose, everybody loses. So you have to keep the boat, you have to keep the ship afloat.
Councilman, you know, one of the things that came out Friday was that Moody's once again reduced our bond rating to an AA2, which is really a big hit because for our audience, bond rating is basically the city's credit rating. So if you've got a 720 credit rating, the bond rating is the same thing for the city. Do you think that that has more to do with the pension? Because we've actually made some strides to improve our pension liabilities, or is it more that unfunded mandate for the CSO, the combined sewer operator? Which do you think bears more on their decision to downgrade?
I think it's a combination of those two, Chris.
Okay.
I think there was a total of 4 that we read, and I just read it a short time ago, and it's rather lengthy between the two. A little more than nighttime reading, I'll tell you that.
No bedside table
No,
that can hold that
I
up.
don't think so. But I think it was a combination of those two. But keep in mind that even though that was downgraded, they also said we've gone from unstable to stable.
Right. Right.
So we got slapped on the hand and a little pat on the back at the same time, and urged to continue our efforts in improving what we're doing in those areas.
And I guess that's my question, because we have had some improvements in gaining on that unfunded liability with a pension. That number is actually, it's getting smaller. It's still huge, but it's getting smaller. Mm-hmm. And then we've taken steps to help pay for the combined sewer operation, which there's a deadline for that one. I can't remember.
2027.
2027. That has to all be done. And I know that there's been a rate hike in utilities. So it seems to me there's been positive steps on both those fronts, but yet it seems the bond rating organizations took us a step backwards. And that's, Councilor Thompson, where I'm losing my understanding.
But part of it is that it's happening nationwide. Mm-hmm. The criteria has tightened. So Omaha isn't the only city that's going through down rating. But what they're afraid of is that the promise of a vote by the union isn't enough. Mm-hmm. They want to actually see a vote. Mm-hmm. So we're probably about, if we had been maybe 6 months ahead of where we are now, we may not have gotten
So
down.
Timing was an issue as well?
Timing, yes.
Okay. And that's not something any of us can really control. I mean, when contract negotiations, they happen as they happen.
It's an animal of its own mind.
Okay. Okay.
And we weren't expecting the 2011 flood either.
Well, that's true too. Right. And now, have we settled that bill yet, Councilman Gernandt? I mean, my understanding.
We're close.
We're close. Okay.
There's one segment of one leg of the triangle of financing that hasn't completely come in yet. And I believe that's FEMA.
Yes. Okay. Now, the other, someone mentioned to me today as I was coming to the station was another factor that I didn't even think about is actually this new OPS bond issue. That actually the city has some responsibility to that bond issue as well. Is that correct? Does that bond issue also reflect on the city as well as an obligation?
That would be a new one to me.
Is okay.
Gary, I haven't heard that connection made before yet.
I've heard of those two dots, but as far as a bridge between those two.
Okay. Well, and I hadn't had time to really research it, but I just thought it was an interesting, our school boards, because they had their own taxing authority, but if they were to default on their bonds, and that was their theory to me was if they were to default on their bonds, who's then responsible? And the theory was, well, then the city would be the ultimate responsible party. But
my research says the state is responsible there, but
we know how well that's been going for
I would have to do some more research, but I'm almost sure the state would be on the hook
for that. And
that's
one more thing I want to talk about is the amount of state support to cities and to counties has just went down. I mean, I would like to say tolerable is how bad it is. And that has forced the city and the county to make some very tough choices. The county raised its property taxes. The city, in the new budget, reduced it. I got to ask you, how do we reduce our income as a city when we know that the support from the states also went down? How did you guys make that work?
Well, I guess you're going to get into the great divide between conservative and liberal in terms of outlook.
All points of view are welcomed.
The conservative view is that all the efficiencies haven't been explored yet, that you can do more with less. I'm one of those conservatives that know you can't go 14, 15, 16 years and not have a tax increase. Some of my colleagues think that you can do that. I know that's pie in the sky thinking. Mm-hmm. But so I'm not anti-tax, I'm just saying it's my last resort. Mm-hmm. One of the ways which the city had to be creative was to have the cigarette tax or the restaurant tax. And so those are different things that have happened. One of the taxes that I sponsored that got repealed was the 3 mile zone tax. That was something that I sponsored back in 2004. And so the state unicameral said that was no longer legal.
And for those of us that live in that ETJ, we're a little happy about that. Gary, what's your perspective when it comes to how to prioritize the income needed to run a city versus the taxes on its citizens?
We play a part in the checks and balance system, as you know, and I've always thought, back in my other life and this particular job, it's creative financing, Chris, and Dr. T was correct. We agree.
Well, you know, we had Councilwoman Melton and Councilman Gray here a few weeks back, and they were agreeing too. So there's not much divide amongst certain issues. But the last thing I want to talk to you guys about is what's next for you guys. Are we? I know that you've been city councilmen for a long time. Is this, Councilman Thompson? Is this your last term, or are you gonna? Because you are a professor at UNO.
Yes.
And Garry Gernandt, for those that don't know, is a retired police officer. So he didn't have to work. He's retired. But I mean, is a fifth term in your line?
I've got a house full of women who like to buy things, so I'm not sure if I can retire yet. But
and I have a mortgage.
Okay.
But I'm taking a real good look at that. I do believe that the talents that I have are best suited at a higher level. I think I would be best serving in Washington. Now, whether or not
Did I just hear an announcement?
Whether or not I make that step, I'm not sure. You know, I'm taking a look at my girls, what they need from daddy, my grandkids, what they need from grandpa. So I'm just taking a kind of an audit right now to see what it is I'm going to do.
Councilor Gernandt, is there a fifth term?
Never say never.
Never say never. Well, that's how we're going to have to leave it, guys. Never say never. And I would say I think the council would miss the leadership and the experience that you guys brought. So I would hope you stayed. You know, maybe Washington. We'll talk about that later, maybe. With that, I want to thank Councilman Thompson and Councilor Gernandt for coming in and talking a myriad of subjects. So join us next week when we're going to have a very big show. We're going to have J.L. Sprague with the Republican Party, Dan Marvin with the Democratic Party, along with Scott Zimmerman, our Libertarian friend, and Levi Lippincott with the Liberty Caucus of the Republican Party. We're going to be talking about the election predictions. Also joining us will be Chris Scott and Joe Jordan. It's going to be a huge show next week. It's going to be the last show before the November 2nd election. All right, guys, that's all for this week. I want to thank you guys for watching. And remember, everyone has a point of view. Respect it.